So I'll tell you right now that I know a few things about the medieval ages. Isn't fake. It's real. Isn't untrue. It's honest. I'll tell you right now. And I'll tell you one thing that's very sincere is that I know about the martial arts. I know that that was an element of practice. It wasn't something that was imaginary, and it wasn't something that was constant. It was something that was kind of earned and totally innovative often. And they didn't know about regional martial arts. Wrong. They knew about local European martial arts regionally. They didn't know about Asian martial arts, as you can imagine. And at the courts, they did not know that Asian martial arts used bladed weapons that were extremely different. One thing that is interesting is they would assume that they use the same weapons as them. So that is your mini lecture on the Middle Ages. And I'll tell you the truth, there's always someone who considers that they use different ones. But for everyone who does, there's someone who considers that they don't use different ones. And so there's a diversity of opinion. Argumentation was a common thing in the Middle Ages. Common thing. People were very good at arguing. And they argued a lot about what type of fighting one should do. Some people did that a little too much and never got around to being good at fighting. So best to keep that in mind. A sword was not the only weapon of importance. Is inaccurate. Often it was because a mace or a flail were considered weapons from the Renaissance. They were considered futuristic weapons that were used against armor that hadn't been really perfected or cheapened for the consumer market. So you're dealing with a lot of chainmail, and that will allow you to understand that the sword is still pretty interesting. But a warhammer, a small warhammer like this, goes against the helmet, right? It's not really used for chainmail. You still use a sword or a spear. And a spear is probably the best one because you want a really sharp spear in order to break that chainmail. And if it helps, you can have some of the momentum of a horse behind you. Sometimes it's a different beast of burden, but I wouldn't be surprised if people back then thought that the cow could ride into battle. All right? That's how primitive they were often with their martial arts thinking. So that's your mini lecture on the Middle Ages fighting and how crucial it was to understanding their day-to-day life. Maybe not. Maybe it was seen as some sort of innovative process, right? So that's the key takeaway. So that's your 3-minute and 30-second clip. The last note for you is that did they use their own coat of arms? They had to if they were rich, or else they wouldn't have a presentation. All right, so there. That is your 3 minutes and 30 second video.